Hi everyone, I am Nu-Trix the Synth Guy, and today we're talking about iPad 2 music production apps. Now, the problem is that the iPad 2 is old by today's standard, and it's a 32-bit iPad. So it only runs iOS 9, and there's a lot of limits if you compare to what you can do today on the iPad. So sequencer-wise or DAW-wise, it's a lot limited compared to what you can find today. But still, we will have a blast using an iPad 2 because there's a lot of really cool apps that runs on it today. Now, if you like what I'm doing, if you like following the stuff that I'm talking about, subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the notification bell so you get notified every time we release new stuff. So let's start it right away. The highest iOS you can run into that is actually the 9 point something, and a lot of things changed since the iOS 9 to 10 to 11 and so on in the audio department, especially about audio plugins. Sadly, running iOS 9 limits you for all these plugins, interaction with sequencers and DAWs that we expect out of computers usually, that you actually find in the most recent iOSs now. They're not really functional, or they don't even exist in the iOS level in iOS 9. So in the DAW department, it's very limited if you compare it to a computer or iOS 11 or 12 or whatever it is. It's very limited. So you'll have mostly beatmakers. What I call beatmakers are self-contained apps that have a drum, a couple of synths, a sequencer, and you can export the sound. So maybe some effects and some mixing capabilities. But it's not a full DAW, meaning most of them don't record sound. So it's not a bad thing. I mean, I love using those apps. So, but people looking for real full DAW, the iPad 2 is not yet there because it's locked at iOS 9. Something else about the iPad 2 is the fact that you cannot do a screen capture of the iPad. So for this video, it won't be the same quality of the image I usually have. I will bring my camera closer to the iPad and it will screen, I'll record the video using my camera. One other thing about the iPad 2, or let's say more about the Apple Store, is that some apps will say that they support iOS 9, which is true, but probably that these devices never thought that people would run them on iOS 9 on an iPad 2, but mostly on iOS 9 on something more recent, because yes, it runs on iOS 9, but they're really not working well on iPad 2. And some of the apps like that, Beatmaker 3, you can download on the iPad 2, but you can't do anything. I mean, you cannot do nothing with that. It just doesn't work. It closes all the time. You load a sequence and it closes the app. It's too much demanding for the iPad 2. So it might run on another iPad that runs iOS 9, but not the iPad 2, at least not in a functional way. So stuff like Aria Pro does not run correctly. It does download, but it does not run correctly because it's too much demanding. Even Gadget, which actually is supported by it, it does not run correctly also on it. It's just too demanding. As long as you're running like 3 devices plus effects, forget about it. It's just going to go, it stutters, it doesn't work correctly. So these actually downloads, but they might run on a newer device than the iPad 2, but on the iPad 2, forget about these things. They're not. Even GarageBand has been updated and now cannot be downloaded to iPad 2. So you cannot have a GarageBand. If you just download today, it won't be there. It won't work. So if we go to DAWs, we really only have Cubasis. and it's the version 2.7, not 3. So a lot of things that we expect in, the newer version, it's not there. So it's a 32-bit only. So still, Cubasis works well if you're looking for a sequencer. It's probably one of the only, I would say, full-flanged, full, complete sequencer that we expect. But still, it's not as powerful that today with the latest version, and then more power that we find. And if you're looking for adding in effects, you don't have anything else. You don't have the wave plugins. It's not there because that's another version. That's the old one that I have right now. That's a 32-bit. And to have the wave plugin, you have to be into the 64-bit. So not that version. Okay, so it runs. It's Cubasis, but the old version, and it's the closest thing I found to be a DAW on the iPad 2. What I put into the Beatmaker family of apps are self-contained drum, at least 2 synthesizers, and a sequencer. So you can actually create a song and output that. And there's a bunch of that for that. You've got NanoStudio 1, not 2. You were able to go in and just type in your drum sounds. Just you go like this. You can go into the first drum. Go to mixer. Let's put this one to solo, just the drum. And then you would go just for the first sequencer, which is the first. This is for the drum. You load it. You can actually load, import different drum sounds. Let's say I want an 808. Import, yes. And then. So that's it. I'm going to have my drum, and then we go into the mixer and say I also want to use this. You have that sound, which is, it sounded amazing at the time. It's still a good synthesizer. When you look at how deep you have here, the quality you have it, you have different ways to combine the different sounds. You can actually load your own samples if you want into this, so it's really interesting. You can edit the sample. So it was already pretty powerful at the time. You can have a loop, you can slice it, you can have a filter, of course. There's enough different types of filter here. Use it correctly. There's a filter for that. There's an envelope for the filter, envelope for the amplitude, LFO, and then you have effects, and you get a really massive modulation matrix that you can have here. So it's really a cool synth, and that's the one you hear. It's just it sounds nice. And then you go to the mixer. We had the other one. Another same synth. They're called Eden. So it's really fast to work with, and that's a device we don't see often today. And of course, if you have a newer device, then that actually runs on something else than the iOS 9. Then I would suggest to go for NanoStudio 2. This one's NanoStudio 1. It does not record sound, so it's not a full DAW in today's sense. It's more of a sequencer that has its own sound modules in it. So you have Bliss that came out almost a month ago, but still runs really without any problem on iPad 2. Because when you go into Bliss, you have the sequencer for the drum, like say, and then you can just trigger and play them. Now, I talked about it last week, and one thing that I didn't talk about is the fact that you can go in, not copy, but you can go in and go edit. What you have here is you actually can, each of these, they don't have to be the same instrument. So you can click on the first one, so instrument number 1, second one, instrument number 2. Maybe this one, and this one's going to be, and this is going to be, and this one's going to be 6, and then. So It can be very bizarre, but that what it means is that on a single track you can have up to 9 different sounds. So it's like having 9 different monophonic synthesizer on one single track. So there's an option here that is really interesting. So Bliss works really well. It's not demanding, so you can actually go in and build your tracks, build your mono synth. Now, keep in mind, I talked about Bliss last week, but one thing people were asking and say, oh, it's monthly pay only. No, you can actually buy it as a one-time fee, and then you own it for the rest of your life. So renting or monthly payment is just an option. So if you don't want that option, you can actually go in and buy it, the whole thing. You have Egoist from SugarBytes. It's one of my personal favorite. It's just a fun thing to play with. I think that this thing is just so fun to play with. The fun factor of this thing is amazing. You know, if you want the full video about this, it's, I think, there. You have, of course, the Korg iPoly 6, the iMS20, and the IDS10. Let's look at that. Kind of a weird little thing that came from the Nintendo DS. Korg started to do stuff with them, or for them, and the Nintendo DS as the IDS, which is a really fun little thing. You know, if you look at what this thing does, you have a synthesizer. You can actually go in and you know, create you know, it looks like almost like an MS-20. Not exactly what it is, but close to an MX-20. You have 2 of them. And then you've got a voice, which is what's special about this thing, and they've got a drum, which is a classic stuff. You know, these are different kick snare. These are just like kick snares, and these are analog soundish. And then if you go voice, that's where this actually shines. As you can actually, so you can just go in, you type there, and then you say, I'm going to record. I'm going to type in like, okay, Nu-Trix. Oops, Nu-Trix. Hey, whoa. Nu-Trix of the synth guy. Done. And then you're going to run. It's actually going to. And you can play. So you can play with that until you like the sound. You can just play with that until you're happy with. So you can play with that. So really interesting, because not a lot of things like that do voice that you can type your stuff and you can play with that. So interesting. So that's the IDS. You have Jim Audio Groovewriter GR16, which is amazing. Works really well on the iPad 2 still. So you can actually go just listen to that. It's just amazingly sounding. I just love the sound of this. It just sounds amazing, and this thing runs really well on the iPad 2 also. So if you want more information, I think that this is there to click, or you go in the description, you have more information, because I did a full video about that one. Poison 202, which is a sound, actually this is a sound engine that you have in the Groovewriter. So I would say if you buy one synth that sounds like everything that you liked from Prodigy and you know, electronic music from the 90s, this is the right thing to look for. It does that and other things, but it really is amazing. So if I did a video about this and the GR16, so watch that. It's in the link down. You have SunVox For those who are more into experimenting, I would say mud-like and modular. Let's look at it. It's kind of a weird thing. SunVox is a app where you've got this controller at the top. You've got this little sequence. If you ever worked with the mod tracker, that's basically what this is. It's a mod tracker. You get your tracks of your drum or your sequence here. I'm going to restore my last one. I'm going to press play. Where's my play button? Here it is. So it's really, it's noisy. It's like 8-bit crushing sounds if you want. You can go and click on that sound and then, okay, I'm going to change the volume of this one. I don't want too much distortion. We go into this one, echo, vibrato, generator, okay. Okay, generator 2. So all of these are generator, and you can actually connect them together. So if you play with this, it's actually a playful thing to actually, you know, use the connection between these devices and create a, you know, a more complex. I've got this very long delay, sorry, and then you can actually, it's just, I mean, this is from, it's a mod tracker, MOD, mod tracker. So for those who love this thing, this is really CPU not intensive, so you can do a lot of things with this. But you've got this 8-bit, you know, noise or grain. So if that's what you like, that's SunVox is an interesting one. This one here, SunVox. And there's something, if you like a sequencer, but a pure sequencer, you have Yamaha Mobile sequencer. This will be a flashback if any of you actually use any type of Yamaha sequencer in the 90s. And I'll show you the one I have still today. This thing here. This was my mobile device that I worked with in the 90s, and this has exactly all the same sound into it. You wish yes, okay. So this has exactly the same sounds into this. You can actually fake all the same sound and use everything you have in this. So I'm going to turn that on, and it's just like, do you have anything? So this is a sequencer, and if you go into edit, stop that, you can actually go and edit the voice select. So these are the sounds you can select. Let's say you go into let's say the sequencer here, you can change the different sounds, lead, and all that stuff. And when it's done, you can go into edit, and you can this one. You can load already sequenced drum beats and stuff, so they give you ideas of how we're going to use this. I'm going to stop the song, and you can edit. And then when you edit, you have a filter, an amplitude, you know, a tight case release, a vibrato, a volume pan, variable. I mean, these are effects you can send to different things. You know, a chorus, reverb, the very effects send and dry sound. So you can actually tune it a little bit so it sounds the way you want. It's a sequencer. It does MIDI, and it has a bunch of sound mods you can play with. But it's very, it's just, if you had these, you're going to say, hey, it's exactly like they were. So it's a copy of the old stuff from the 90s from Yamaha. So here we go. And these are for the beat makers. Now, if we look into synthesizers, from SugarBytes, you have Unique. I did a video about that, so I'm not going to talk about it, but it's really cool. You have Cyclop. Never talked about it, so watch this. Cyclop is just, let's say, an experiment into a noise synth. is just really, really efficient in making noises. Listen to this stuff, man. It's a really noisy, really aggressive sounding synth. And it's a monster of modulation. All of these things here can be modulated to a Synth 1, Synth 2, filter, and it can, like, a Wumbler amplifier, there's an envelope, there's LFO, all of these, it's a massively powerful modulation matrix, and all of this can be modulated. It's just a monster of wobbling sound. So if you're into that, this is really cool, and it runs on the iPad 2 correctly, so it's another option here. What else do we have for the iPad 2? We have Cassini. Did talk about it, so watch this other video about the best app for iPad, but Cassini is a cool one. You have the iMini from Arturia. You have the ISEM from Arturia again. These also are really cool. Simple, efficient clones or replication of original analog synths. And no, this one distorts too loud. And they've got a little bit more information. You can interconnect these two other things. There's perform mode, and there's effects you can add. It's distorting. It's too loud for my microphone. So it's really, I mean, this one is really a nice one. Same thing with the ISEM. So. This one sounds really nice if you like the sound of the SEM. You know, Arturia has been doing simulation of analog synth for a long time, so this is a cool one to find. And it runs really well on the iPad too, so look up for this one. You have Nave from Waldorf. I talked about it earlier, I think, in another video. Nave, it's always been a nice one for me, made by Waldorf. And Nave is a wavetable synthesizer. You can actually put your own sample in it and play it. Wait a sec. You hear it says I am Nave, and I don't know what it is. You can go into this, actually close that one. Wave. See different ways of looking at the wave. You go into full mode, you see the wave here. You can actually run, move around. See the red lines? It goes into, that's where you are in the sample. So it's really powerful. It's just a massively powerful synth. You've got, of course, distortion, envelope, filter, ADSR or AD, that's your choice. You have modulation. There's different sources and destination. You've got keyboard control. You've got another one here to control. You got effects. And then you have here, you can load phaser, chorus, and stuff like that. This is delay, reverb. There's EQ, an arpeggiator. There's actually a tape. You can actually, it's a not real tape. You can record different tracks and kind of start building a song here. Not a big fan of that, but it's there if you want to. And there's the wave part when you can actually control the wave. There's a spectrum, and there's two of them. So there's another one here you can have. So it's really, really powerful. It's a really cool app. And it's by Waldorf, so you know, if you like that digital, actually sometimes it's more analogish sounding, but the wavetable in this thing is really powerful, so it's really fun. So I think it runs well on the iPad too. If you're looking for a synth, it's another one to look for in this case. And we have Animoog from Moog, and it's actually a pretty cool one. And this has been out for a long time, so it works really well on the iPad too. Now, if we look at drum machine, you have the iElectribe that runs really well on the iPad too. So the iElectribe from Korg in a iPad version. You have SeekBeats. It's one of the drum machines that I really like to go back to because it's just a fun synthesis, and there's a random feature in it that really is cool. There's DM1 and DM2. They're not related outside of the original guy who created these two things. The two of them sounds amazing. They're different, but you basically have the same logic. These are great drum sequencer and drum generators. And you have Paterning. Now Paterning, I gotta show you what it is. It's pattern in a really bizarre way. The interface is very different than what you used to in the logic of having a graphic interface for. Let's actually look at this. So you get a circle, and when you click on the different sound here, that's where you select which circle you're going to play with. And when you press play, it's going to go through. Let's I'm going to start a new pattern. New. Okay. Discard. Okay. So pattern, kick. I'm going to say I'm going to kick. So I'm just going to, and when you move this, you're changing the volume of your sound. Go. So it's really easy to create something fun. And then for each of them, you can go in and say, you got the sample you can click on, you can select the part you want to play. You can load different samples, other sample if you want. And you've got a lot of options here. And then you can play with the attack of the sound, the decay, the attack here, the decay, the coarse tuning, the fine tuning, the choke, the solo. If you just want to hear that one, close that. So it's really, powerful enough. And then you get stuff like, I've got a filter. Okay, I'm going to select which type of filter I'm going to use. I'm going to use this one here, and I'm going to control. What am I doing? I'm actually destroying my beat. Okay, and then you can actually write different, you can add layers, panning, because I'm on this one, if I change to kick, I'm going to have a different one. Fill cut up, so you can actually play with that. So it's really, really powerful, and then you can change the drum kit to another one. Some of them are really bizarre. Okay, so you can play with that. I actually like this one a lot because I find it really easy to create stuff with. So patterning is a fun, but I as soon as it's got something, I just output it as a WAV file and start working somewhere else with that. Now, if you're into mastering, there's also something really cool that it's called Final Touch that runs really well. And honestly, I mastered my last EP using Aria Pro, but Final Touch was my first choice to work with. And if you look at the iPad, because you don't have Aria Pro, or you don't have Aria Pro, I think you should look into Final Touch, which is a dedicated app for mastering. I'll show you what it is. Just Final Touch. Final Touch, as you have your, here at the bottom here, you have your suite of all the different effects, and you can change the order in which they're going to be applied. And if you don't want them, you take them, you bring them up. They're going to be outside of the chain. If you want them back, bring them down, drop them. They're going to be in the chain of effects. So you have a pre-EQ, a reverb, a dynamics. You have the graphic of the dynamics. So it's a dynamic compressor. And you have, it also does sides, a mid and side, and stereo, or normal stereo, or mid-side stereo. So you can have a wider sound with this, which is really powerful. You have a stereo imaging. I'm going to play just that so you see what it looks like. And you can have something like, okay, I want everything under 344 to be mono. So you can bring all the drums, or all the bass to be monophonic, and then you have a wider stereo width over, you know, depending where you want to cut the high frequencies. You have this for this. You have post EQ again. You get a maximizer. It's kind of a, yeah, it's a limiter with some feature, and then you've got a dithering process at the end to bring, depending on what you have in, you can control what's coming out in a different format. So this is, and then you can save this as a preset and reapply it. Let's say you did a couple of songs using the same workflow. You can actually use the same preset to start quickly on the other ones. So that's it, guys. These are the apps I found that actually runs on iPad 2 today, and they're functional enough to be able to use them and create. I'm not saying that the other stuff you can find are not there, are not able to do it, but I found that some other apps that would actually be able to download to the iPad 2 was not running in a functional manner. Now, there's also other apps I don't own and I don't have access to, so if you have any other apps that runs on the iPad 2 that should be in the list of music production tools, put them in the comments so that others can actually see them. I might talk about them in other videos. That's it. If you like what I'm doing, thumb up, share it with your friends, subscribe, and click on the bell so you get notification. See you next time. Cheers.